hi, welcome to our solutions homework number 2. And I'm going to be working through these problems. Most of these problems are related to table F in your reference table. Let's get rid of some of these markings before we start. All right, let's take a look at question number 1. So according to table F, and again, table F, if it's telling you to go to table F, then absolutely we should be going to table F. Which ions combine with chloride ions to form an insoluble compound, right? So that means that it's not soluble. So then let's go to table F, all right, our reference tables, and let's just make those a bit bigger. Okay, so I'm looking for something that's going to combine with a chloride ion, which is right here, the chloride ion. And I'm looking for something that's going to form an insoluble compound. Well, remember, this is like two separate tables, right? This is the soluble side. This is the insoluble side. So chlorides are soluble, except if it's with one of these 3 elements. So I'm looking for, to answer my question on our homework, either silver, lead, or mercury. So it's going to be silver. So then I have soluble, 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 and then insoluble. All table F questions are going to follow the 3 the same, 1 different pattern, right? So terrible looking S's. Okay, so which compound is insoluble in water? So not soluble. So I have bromide, 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 bromide. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at bromide, and I'm going to see which one of these is insoluble. So back to my reference table, I'm looking at bromide now. And which one's going to be insoluble? Well, bromides are soluble, except silver, lead, or mercury. So again, I'm looking for silver, lead, or mercury. There's silver. Silver is Ag. This is also testing whether or not you know what the formula or what the element symbols and the names are. Okay, so next question based on reference table F. Which of these saturated solutions has the lowest concentration of dissolved ions? Well, if something has a low concentration of dissolved ions, I'm looking for something that's going to be insoluble, right? Because it'll have very little dissolved. So basically, I'm looking at, again, we're looking at chlorides again, just like the halides we looked at in questions 1 and 2. And again, silver chloride is insoluble. So I'm not going to go back to reference table F because it's basically the same question as question 1 and 2. Okay, so now next question. According to reference table F, which substance is the most soluble? Well, whichever one is going to be the most soluble is going to be the only one soluble because it's got to follow a 3 the same, 1 different pattern, right? I'm going to have 3 that are insoluble and only 1 will be soluble. So then going back to my reference tables, so we're going to look at our negative ions. I have an iodine, a chlorine, and a sulfate, and a carbonate. So I have silver, iodine, silver iodide. All right, so let's look at the first 2, right? So I have silver and lead with a halogen. So I have silver and lead with a halogen. Those are going to both be insoluble. So I'm going to put an X. Those are insoluble. So now I'm looking at sulfate and carbonate. Okay, so sulfate and carbonate. So I have sulfates are where? Here. So sulfates are soluble, except if it's with one of these. So is the sulfate with one of those? Let's go back and check. Sulfate is with calcium. With calcium makes it insoluble. So then that's also not soluble. So then there's my answer, but let's double check the solubility just to make sure. I have an NH4 and a CO3. So I have carbonates are insoluble, except if they're with group 1 elements in the periodic table or an NH4. So I had that NH4 in my question, so that does make this one soluble. Because remember, this side is insoluble. The exceptions are soluble. All right, I'm just going to do a little bit of erasing so that when we get to the next set of questions. It's not so messy. All right, so let's take a look at your next question. While I clumsily erase, you guys can take a look at the next question. And hopefully you have an answer, and hopefully your answers agree with mine. Okay, I think that'll do for now. Okay, so going back to our questions. Okay, so which compound is the most soluble in water? Well, if it's going to be the most soluble, it's going to be the only one that's soluble. Okay, so I have acetate, nitrate, chloride, hydroxide. So let's find acetate first. So acetates are soluble. Acetates are soluble. No exceptions, right? So that's soluble. And so then that's going to be soluble. The next one is a nitrate. So going to my table, nitrate is here. Nitrates are soluble, no exception. So then the nitrate is soluble. So now I have a chloride with a silver. Okay, there's my chloride, soluble, except, oh, there's that silver again. Right, notice that's a popular one to use. Oops, sorry, I don't mean to circle that. I'm just going to make that not soluble. Hold on. And then I have silver with hydroxide. Oops, silver. Wait, pause. Hold on. Hydroxides are insoluble. Okay. So then I have nitrates and acetates. All right, so basically, sorry kids, that is a really weird question. I do not think you'd be expected to answer that on the Regents exam. But anyways, it's going to be nitrate, and that's something that you're not expected to know. Okay, so which ion combines with barium to form a compound that is most soluble in water? So I'm looking for something that combines with barium to be soluble. So I've got a sulfide with a sulfur. So let's look at that first. Sulfides are insoluble, except if they're in group 1 or with an NH4. Is barium in group 1? No, barium is in group 2, so that makes that insoluble. So now let's look with barium and carbonate. So carbonates are insoluble, except with group 1 or NH4. Is barium in group 1? No, barium is in group number 2, insoluble. So then I have a hydroxide. So then I'm going back to my reference tables. I'm going to find hydroxides. Is hydroxide soluble? No, except if it's in group 1, but it's not. It's in group 2. Or calcium. Oh, there's barium. It's an exception. So barium with hydroxide will be soluble. So then that is going to be a soluble compound. And double check. Let's just make sure that SO4 is insoluble. Where's our sulfate? Sulfates are are soluble, except, barium makes it insoluble. So then insoluble. There we go. All right, let's move on to our next question. Again, I apologize for question number 5. Okay, so under which conditions of temperature and pressure is a gas most soluble? Again, if a gas is going to be most soluble, I want something that is the opposite of ideal, right? Because does a gas really want to be trapped inside of a liquid? Absolutely not. A gas wants to spread out and be free. So what is the opposite of ideal? Well, ideal, right, is, high temperature and low pressure. So then I'm looking for the opposite of that, which is low temperature and high pressure. So I want low temperature and high pressure. Okay. So now at room temperature, the solubility of which solute in water would be most affected by a change in pressure, right? Pressure just means squeezing something, right? The only particles that can squeeze together are the particles of a gas. And now it's up to you to figure out which one of those is a gas. Well, hopefully you know sugar is not a gas. And I hope you know that carbon dioxide is a gas. Okay, so now when lead iodide is added to sodium carbonate, a white precipitate is formed. So that means something white drops out of this mixture. According to reference table F, the white precipitate most likely is. If something falls out of a mixture, that means it's going to be insoluble. So then now I need to find something that's insoluble. Okay, so I'm going back to my reference tables. I have a nitrate and an iodide. So let's go back to those. Nitrate and iodides. So let's switch colors so I don't have to erase. Nitrate and iodide. Okay, soluble, no exceptions. Iodides are soluble, except with one of those three. And is sodium one of those three? No. So this is soluble, and that's also soluble. So now we're looking at carbonate, right? So we're both looking at carbonate, and now we're just comparing a lead and a sodium with the carbonate. So I've got my carbonate right here. Carbonates are insoluble, except if it's with group 1 or an NH4. Is lead in group 1? No. So lead is not in group 1, so then that is not soluble. And is sodium in group 1? Yes, sodium is in group 1, so that makes that soluble. 3 the same, 1 different. Okay, so then which one is a homogeneous mixture? A homogeneous mixture means everything is even all the way throughout. And it has to be a mixture. H2O liquid is not a mixture. That is a pure substance. That's a compound. That is water. This is a solid compound. Compound is a pure substance, not even a mixture. H2S gas is a compound, not even a mixture. Homogeneous mixture, we're always looking for that AQ. So that's going to be D. All right, so according to reference table F, which one is the most soluble in water? Well, whichever one is going to be soluble. So now we're looking at 2 carbonates, barium and zinc. Okay, so 2 carbonates, barium and zinc. Let's choose another color. Let's choose blue. So carbonates, okay, barium and zinc. Carbonates are insoluble unless it's with group 1. Are barium or zinc in group 1? No. So these are not soluble. Barium's in group 2 and zinc is a transition metal. So now I'm looking at sulfates, barium and zinc. So now I'm looking at sulfates over here. Sulfates are soluble except with barium. So then barium sulfate will be insoluble. And then zinc is not one of the exceptions, so the zinc would be soluble. So soluble, not soluble. 3 the same, 1 different, soluble. Okay, so here we have which one is the most soluble. So if I have 10 out of 50, 20 out of 60, 30 out of 120, that's all pretty confusing, right? So whichever one is going to be the most soluble is going to be whichever one has the most dissolved. But I have different amounts of grams of substance and different amounts of grams in water. So basically, I'm going to do a little bit of math, right? I'm going to treat this as when I have 10 grams per 50 grams, that just means 10 out of 50, which is the same thing as dividing by 10 divided by 50. So when I do the math, right, and I do 10 out of 50, right, and then that's times 100, that's going to give me 20%. Oops, let me connect that 0. That means 20% is dissolved. Now, if I have 20 out of 60, now I've got a 33% dissolved. If I have a 30 out of 120, I have a 25% dissolved. And if I have 40 out of 80, I know that's a half, so that's 50%. So the one that is most soluble is choice number D. All right, so this is basically all reference table F questions. Our next set of questions, we're going to delve into the math formulas on table T, molarity, and parts per million. All right, so make sure table F is tricky. Make sure you're really reading it carefully, interpreting all of your choices before making a choice. All right, until our next video, I will see you next time.